Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, yeah, Urban Meyer has called out the Vols. He's got them as his dark horse to win an Natty next year. We're going to talk about that. Also, Shane Beamer has called out Lane Kiffin. We're going to talk all about that too, but let's get into this first story. This is all about Urban and his thoughts on Nico Iamaleava and the Vols and their opportunity or chance to win a national championship next year. And he appeared on the Triple Option, which is a YouTube channel that they get some great guests on it. I mean, they're, as a YouTuber, they're kind of knocking it out of the park with that, with their get list, so to speak.
All right, so those are the favorites. Now let's talk some dark horses. This is where it gets interesting. So the best of the rest, if you will. Here's those numbers, Coach, that I know you love. Notre Dame plus 1,400.
You don't even got
You're tied, Mark, plus 1,500. Tennessee, Nico I is back plus 2,000. You got Clemson, LSU, Michigan, Ole Miss is at 2,500. A&M at plus 3,000. Miami with the former Georgia quarterback Carson Beck in there at plus 3,000. So, Coach, is there a dark horse out there that tickles you a little bit?
Yeah, Nico, the quarterback at Tennessee. You know, I had them. I remember when I first started studying them last year, and I called Brady Quinn and Matt Leinart, and I said, what am I missing here? This guy looks like a bona fide. He looks like Aaron Rodgers. The ball comes out of his hand like a tennis ball, man.
Kent State.
Good point. That's what I was missing. And he got really inconsistent, and that team around him got a little bit inconsistent. They still had a heck of a year. So if that kid grows as a quarterback, he could be I asked the question after watching, and I know he wasn't playing great teams, but just his physical ability, his side speeds, athleticism, and the ball comes out. I saw him as a high first-round draft pick. Now, it remains to be seen, but I'll pick Tennessee.
And I believe that was Mark Ingram. Didn't he play for Alabama? A great player at Alabama. Anyway, there's a pick from Urban Meyer, and that's exactly what I've seen. First time I saw him play, Nico, I thought the same thing, man. That ball comes out his hand like a slingshot. And the one concern I had was he's 6'6". Those guys take a little bit longer to grow into their body because they're so lanky. And he came in at 195 pounds, which is nothing in the SEC. So he's put on about 20 pounds for his redshirt freshman year, and he played a pretty solid year. He had 19 touchdowns, I think 5 interceptions, threw for like 2,500 yards or whatever it was. But we were primarily a running team because the defenses that played Tennessee, because of our offense, they put out what I call the umbrella defense, where they go 3-3-5, put 3 on the line, 3 linebackers, and then 5 defensive backs. And what they're trying to do is make sure that you never can get past their defensive backs and hit those big, giant touchdowns that we were known for 3 years in a row. So what that does, though, they only put 5 in the box, 6 in the box. You can run on that. And we ran on it big time with Dylan Sampson, and pretty much anybody we put in there is going to get some yards running. So that worked out pretty good for us. We won 10 ball games, got in the playoffs, so it was a good season. But we got beaten pretty bad by Ohio State, who was they were on a mission this year. They just were. Once they got beat by Michigan, that was a different team. I don't know if it was because Ryan Day let Chip Kelly do what he can do, or maybe they were all just kind of butthurt from that, or big-time butthurt and just went nuts. But anyway, I got to agree with him as far as a dark horse. Now, I would put that list they had up there was about right. You know, you've got your Ohio State in there. You've got your Georgia, Oregon, all the big-time teams that have a lot of talent, have recruited really well, Texas. But I could see Tennessee sneaking in there and doing some real damage. It's just a matter of how they do against Alabama and Florida on the road. Those are the 2 biggest games for Tennessee next year. They got to figure out to at least split that. They need a win out of those 2 games. And we have not won in the swamp in forever, and we've not won in Alabama in forever. It's just, we just haven't. We've beaten those 2 teams 2 years in a row at Neyland, but not on the road. So if we can pick up a win there and then only lose maybe one more, go 10-2 again, I think they can get into the college football playoff and then do some damage. And realize Ohio State, who's going to be way up on the list as far as being able to possibly repeat, they lost their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator, that's a huge blow. It just flat out is for anybody. And that's something Nick Saban had to deal with all the time back in the day when he was having that big run of national championships, he was constantly losing an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and that's just part of winning. When you win a national championship, people are going to come scurrying for those coordinators and for all your players, especially now in the transfer portal age and NIL. See, that's one thing Nick didn't have to worry about. He didn't have to worry about people coming in and grabbing and poaching all his players. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting to hear Urban Meyer say that. Now we need to talk about Shane Beamer and Lane Kiffin. There's some bad blood there, and rightfully so. And they got to play again this year, by the way. And Beamer has taken another shot at Lane Kiffin. It says Shane Beamer issued a fiery message with a dig at Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, aiming at the latest meeting between the two schools. And I watched that ball game. I know many of you did too. What Lane Kiffin did in that game was ridiculous. There were so many fake injuries that it was absurd. The only game I saw where there were more fake injuries by Ole Miss would have been the Kentucky game last year, and somehow Kentucky won that game. It's one of the few they won. It was a miracle. Every single time South Carolina did anything that was a splash play, boom, somebody'd go down. Boom, somebody'd go down. It happened like a dozen times. It was crazy. Same thing against Kentucky. And you know that's been a huge issue, not only for NCAA football, but for me. It's driven me nuts. I can't take it, and especially not coming from Lane Kiffin. Can't take it. And we have on this channel, and you've helped me, I think we've played a role in putting a stop to a lot of it. Finally, Greg Sankey stepped up and warned him and said, any more of this shenanigans, there'll be a $50,000 fine, then a $100,000 fine, then you're suspended. It goes on in the story. And, of course, Gamecocks wouldn't have won that game regardless. That was their one really bad loss. But that's the thing that was ridiculous. Even when they were way ahead by 3 touchdowns, they were still doing the fake injuries.
Allegedly.
And it talks about how the coach was accused in fake injuries like pretty much any game they had prior to Sankey taking a stand. The Rebels firmly denied those claims, but months later, Beamer doubled down on his accusation. He said, a team we played this season, it's amazing how many times they had an injury on defense after the opposing offense made a first down or an explosive play and had some momentum. There's certainly something to that, and you have to be able to overcome it as a team. He said, we're not perfect, don't get me wrong, but certainly that is what some people are using it for. 1, to slow momentum, 2, to catch their breath. He said, and if a team is going fast and they need a minute to catch their breath, it's not what the sport intended for. There's no question that it's a bad look for everyone involved. He said, look, there were some absolutely embarrassing, blatant faking of injuries that we saw this season, and it's not what's best for the game. There's no question about it. The teams don't want to see it. The fans don't want to see it. So, yeah, he just laid him out. He may not have called him out by name, but we all know exactly what he's talking about. And I got to give Beamer some credit for that. If it had been me, I'd have called him out by name. I would have risked the penalty or the fine or whatever they'd given me. If I sat there, I would have been screaming during the game. They'd probably have to break us up. It's absurd. He's such a faker of that. Now, I will say this. Ever since Sankey came out, he's quit a lot of that crap. I think the fake injuries have been cut back by about 90%, but Beamer's still butthurt about it, and I don't blame him. I really don't. I think he has a right to be ticked off. Now, I'm no Beamer fan, as you know. I still think that he had our signs back in 2022.
In my opinion.
I can't prove it, but when you show up and you've got a special wristband that's got the plays on it all of a sudden, you hadn't used it all year, and you hadn't scored but 16 points in the previous 2 games, 16 total, then all of a sudden you score 9 straight touchdowns.
9 times.
9 times.
Then you go and beat Clemson on the road, something nobody does. Clemson rarely loses on the road. It's very rare, especially back then. And they won that game. They scored almost 100 points in those 2 games, and then they went 2-7 after that. Now, I'm not saying that old Shane Beamer had the signs himself. I'm just saying that there might have been an analyst that had them that looked the other way, because there was a report that went out in the news that somebody with direct knowledge said that Michigan may very well have reached out to a team to try to derail a team that was on the college football playoff path. That would have been Tennessee and or Clemson. And we also know, based on many reports, that our boy, Connor Stallions, had pre-scouted both Tennessee and Clemson that year.
Sign stealer guy.
Yeah, you know, he had all his little minions out there recording with their iPhones or smartphones. Anyway, and I've covered the crap out of that, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to find out the truth one way or the other. Connor refuses to cooperate on any level, but I will give Beamer credit for this. And they had a solid year last year. They were a fun team to watch. So, and I think that was pretty straight up. He still does. Beamer still has to do his nonsense of faking like he was downing the ball on a kickoff, which is really, you're really borderline unethical by doing that, because that causes the defense to pull back so they don't get anybody hurt. And then you fake it and you take off. Or for him, they passed over to the side thinking they'd have a pure alley up to the goal line. Don't do that crap, Shane. Just don't do that. That's not a fake play. That's playing with ethics that you shouldn't do. He lives in that gray area too much. I don't like that about him. He's the trickster. He's the magic man, or I guess he thinks he's the magic man. Anyway, this is a guy that's already paid a $25,000 fine as an assistant for taking information he shouldn't take. So it's not like, he doesn't have a bit of a past there. Anyway, South Carolina's fun to watch. They're going to be fun to watch this year with Lenore Sellers. I'm very torn on South Carolina. I like Lenoris. I like their defense. They're fun to watch, but I'm still mad about that 2022, and I don't like that shady crap that he does. He doesn't need to do that. Just play ball, man. Now, some of his trick plays are fun, but not when you're doing this crap. And Brett Bielema called him out. And man, he went nuts. It was hilarious. One thing about Shane, he is entertaining. Anyway, I'm still rooting for Lenore Sellers. I like the guy. Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's continue to cover all these big college sports stories. Man, I'm so torn. Torn. Wasn't there a song back in the 90s? Torn. It was a big hit. And if you haven't subscribed, hit this little button right here. It won't cost you a dime. Help you get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy based on your viewing history. We'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.